Long before your grandfather's grandfather drew his first breath, the people of West Africa understood something that the modern world has since forgotten, that the world you see with your eyes is only half of the world that exists. The other half breathes in the darkness between the trees. Tonight, I bring you a story from the Yoruba people of what is now southwestern Nigeria, a tale passed down through generations not merely to frighten, but to teach. Because in Africa, every horror has a lesson sewn into its shadow. This is the story of Kola, the boy who wore the wrong face, and the ancient spirit that came to take it back. Gather close. And whatever you do, do not look behind you. The village of Idanwo, which in the Yoruba tongue means, the place of testing, sat at the edge of the Ìgbó Elemi, the forest of souls. Now, you must understand something about this forest. The elders said that Ìgbó Elemi was not planted by men. It was grown by Ogun, the Yoruba god of iron and wilderness, as a boundary, a curtain between the world of the living and the realm of wandering spirits. The trees there grew so tall they seemed to hold up the sky. Their roots drank from rivers that had no source. And at night, if you listened carefully past the chirping of crickets and the distant cry of the nightjar bird, you could hear whispering. Not the whisper of wind. The whisper of names. The people of Idanwo knew 3 sacred rules about the forest. Rule 1, never enter Ìgbó Elemi after sunset. Rule 2, if you find something in the forest, a cloth, a pot, a mask, anything, leave it where it lies. Rule 3, never, under any circumstance, call out your own name inside the forest. For there are things in there that collect names like other creatures collect bones. These were not superstitions. These were laws, as firm as the earth and as old as hunger. Kola had heard these rules his entire life. Kola broke all 3. Kola was 17, bright-eyed, and burning with the particular fire of a boy who believes he already knows everything. He was the son of Babatunde, the village herbalist, a man of deep knowledge and quiet authority. From his father, Kola had learned the names of healing roots, the songs that called rain, and the proper way to pour libation for the ancestors. But Kola was also the boy who skipped evening prayers. The boy who laughed when old Mama with grave warned the children about the spirits. The boy who said, in the arrogance of youth, those are stories for people who are afraid. His best friend, Temi, a sharp, careful girl with close-cropped hair and eyes that noticed everything, often warned him. Kola, she would say, intelligence without respect is just a faster road to destruction. Kola would laugh. And the laughter would echo in the trees at the forest edge, and something old and patient and hungry would stir, just slightly, in the dark. It began on the night of the On festival, the annual celebration honoring On, the Yoruba goddess of rivers, fertility, and feminine power. The whole village had gathered at the river's bank. Drums thundered. Women danced in yellow and gold. Offerings of honey, cowries, and orange peels floated downstream. It was the most sacred night of the year. And Kola, drawn by the restlessness of youth and a dare from the older boys, slipped away from the celebration and walked toward Ìgbó Elemi. If you're so brave, one of the older boys had said, go into the forest and bring back proof. Kola told himself he would only go to the first line of trees. Just enough to say he had done it. Just enough to prove something to no one important. But the forest has its own gravity. And once it pulls you in. He crossed the tree line at precisely the moment the festival drums fell silent for the prayer blessing, as if the world itself had held its breath. Inside, the forest was different. You must understand this. The air was thick and warm like the inside of a mouth. The moonlight, which had been bright and generous outside, barely filtered through the canopy. The sounds were wrong, too deliberate, as if arranged by someone who had studied what a forest should sound like but had never quite gotten it right. Kola walked deeper than he intended. His feet moved as if guided. Then he saw it. Hanging from the low branch of an iroko tree, the iroko, which the Yoruba call the tree of the gods, was a mask. It was extraordinary. Carved from dark wood so old it had turned the color of midnight, the mask bore a human face, but perfected. Cheekbones carved high and proud. A wide, noble brow. Lips slightly parted as if about to speak a secret. The eyes were hollow, but somehow, from certain angles, they seemed to hold a faint amber glow, like the last ember of a dying fire. Around its edges, white cowrie shells had been threaded on copper wire, and marks Kola recognized as Nsibidi. An ancient sacred script were etched around the chin. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He remembered rule too. He took it anyway. What is Nsibidi? Nsibidi is a real ancient system of symbols used by the Ajan people of southeastern Nigeria and parts of Cameroon, dating back over 5,000 years. It was used for communication, spiritual practice, and secret society rituals. In Yoruba and broader West African traditions, certain objects marked with sacred script were considered owned by spirits or deities and were not to be disturbed. This was not mere superstition, it was a sophisticated cultural legal system protecting sacred spaces and objects. Kola brought the mask home hidden under his wrapper. His father was still at the festival. The house was empty and lamplit. He held the mask up. In the firelight, it was even more stunning. He turned it over in his hands, ran his thumb over the cowrie shells, traced the Nsibidi markings. Then, as boys do, he put it on. The moment the mask settled over his face, Kola felt something shift. Not painful. Not frightening. Something more subtle and far more dangerous. A sense of completion. As if a door he had not known was open had quietly clicked shut. He looked at himself in his mother's polished copper mirror. And he laughed, because he looked magnificent. Wiggle. Older. Like someone important. He took the mask off and hid it beneath his sleeping mat. That night, he dreamed of a river that flowed upward. Of voices calling a name he didn't recognize but that somehow felt like his. Of amber eyes in a dark that was not empty, a dark that was full, and watching, and very, very awake. He woke before dawn, heart hammering, mouth dry. The mask was no longer under his mat. It was on the wall across from him, hanging perfectly level, as if someone had mounted it while he slept. And the hollow eyes were pointed directly at him. Over the next 7 days, strange things happened in Idanwo. The first sign, Kola's shadow began to move wrong. Not dramatically. Just a fraction of a second behind him. Just slightly too large. His friend Temi noticed first. Kola, she said one morning, staring at the ground near his feet. Stand still. He stood still. His shadow kept moving, just a twitch, like something trapped inside it was trying to shake itself loose. You went into the forest, Temi whispered. It wasn't a question. The second sign, the mask could not be removed from the wall. Kola's father, Babatunde, noticed it when he returned from the festival. He frowned at it deeply, reached up to take it down, and found his hand simply would not close around it. Like trying to grip smoke. His hands passed through it. Yet it remained visible, solid-looking, and perfectly still. Babatunde turned to his son with eyes that had seen enough of the world to skip past anger directly into dread. Where did you get this? He asked quietly. Kola told him. Every word. Babatunde sat down. He said nothing for a long time. Then he said, You have taken an Obiku mask, my son. In Yoruba cosmology, Obiku refers to spirit children, souls who exist between the world of the living and the spirit realm. They are believed to enter the world through birth, live briefly, and return to the spirit world, often causing their mothers to suffer repeated child loss. The term Obiku literally means born to die. However, Obiku spirits are complex, they are not merely evil. They represent a category of being that belongs to both worlds and neither world fully. Wole Soyinka, the Nobel Prize-winning Nigerian author, wrote a famous poem about Abiku. J.P. Clark also explored the concept. These spirits were said to have objects, masks, rings, stones, that bound them to a family or location. Taking such an object was considered an act of spiritual trespass. Babatunde explained. The Obiku spirits sometimes carve their faces into masks and leave them near sacred trees as anchors, objects that tether them between worlds. The mask you took was not lost. It was not abandoned. It was placed. And now it has been disturbed. The spirit it belongs to is searching for its face. Searching how? Kola asked. His father looked at the boy's shadow on the wall behind him, larger now, darker, and shaped, just slightly, like something that was not quite Kola. By following the one who took it. By the fifth night, Kola could hear the voice. Not outside. Not in the forest. Inside, somewhere between his ears and the back of his thoughts, a thin, reedy child's voice that spoke only 3 words, repeated endlessly, "Give it back." He stopped eating. His eyes developed dark circles. He became short-tempered and then strangely silent. His mother pressed her palm to his forehead and felt a fever that came and went like tides. Temi came to sit with him. She was afraid, but she was the kind of person who sat with the people she loved even when she was afraid, which is the truest form of courage. "You have to return it," she said. "I know," Kola whispered. "Tonight." "I know." "Kola." She grabbed his arm. "Look at me." He turned. And for just a moment, a fraction of a heartbeat, his eyes went brown. They were amber. Like the last ember of a dying fire. Temi did not scream. She tightened her grip. "I'm going with you," she said. On the 7th night, Kola and Temi entered Ìgbó Elemi together. Babatunde had prepared them. He had drawn protective ocean marks on their arms in white chalk. He had given them each a small pouch of irisin, the sacred divination powder of the E4 system, to pour at the base of the Iroko tree. He had taught them what to say. Speak clearly. No trembling in the voice. Spirits read fear the way we read faces, everything is written there. The forest at night was worse than Kola had imagined. But he had lived with 7 days of the whispering, and there is something about sustained terror that eventually converts to grim determination. They found the Iroko tree. At its roots, they were not alone. The Obiku stood there. Not monstrous. This is the detail that separated African spirit horror from what the Western world imagines. The Obiku appeared as a child, 8, perhaps 9 years old. With skin the color of deep river water and eyes that were entirely amber, lit from within like lanterns. Its feet did not touch the ground. It wore no expression of rage. It wore an expression of waiting. In its outstretched hands, the mask, which had vanished from the wall of Kola's home, which had returned here on its own. Kola stepped forward. His legs shook. He poured the irisin at the base of the tree. He spoke the words his father had taught him. An acknowledgement, an apology, and a promise, in Yoruba, in the formal register reserved for addressing the divine.
Èmi ẹni tí ó jí ohun rẹ̀ láìmọ̀, mo padà. Mo tún wà. Jẹ́ kí àlàáfíà wà láàrin wa.
I am the one who took your thing without knowing. I return. I stand corrected. Let there be peace between us. The child spirit looked at him for a long time. Then, slowly, it smiled. Not warmly. Not coldly. Simply, recognized him. The way you recognize someone who has finally, genuinely, understood something important. It turned. Walked, floated, 3 steps into the dark between the trees. And was gone. The amber glow faded from the hollow eyes of the mask as it fell from the branch where it had reappeared. Kola caught it, and the wood crumbled in his hands like dry ash. Like something finally released. The forest exhaled. The real sounds, crickets, nightjars, the distant river, rushed back in like a tide. They ran. Kola recovered fully. His shadow returned to normal the very next morning. He ate 3 bowls of his mother's egusi soup and slept for 14 hours. But he was changed. Not broken, changed. The way iron changes in fire. Harder and more useful. He went on to study under his father in earnest. He learned Ifo divination. He became the kind of man who knew when to speak and when to be silent, when to take and when to leave. This story is built on real cultural and philosophical traditions. Yoruba cosmology. The Yoruba people of Nigeria have one of the world's richest spiritual systems, including the Orisha, or deities, Ifo, or divination, and beliefs about the layered nature of existence between the living world and the spirit realm. The Obiku tradition. A real and complex concept in Yoruba belief, also echoed in the Ogbanj spirits of Igbo culture, representing the thin boundary between life and death, physical and spiritual worlds. The ethics of sacred space. Traditional African communities maintain deep ecological and spiritual respect for forest and natural spaces, a form of environmental ethics centuries before modern conservation science. Ubuntu philosophy. The idea that I am because we are. Kola's redemption only came through community, his father's wisdom, Temi's courage, and his own humility. Oral tradition as education. African folktales were never merely entertainment. They were the continent's textbooks, law books, and moral guides, passed down through voice, memory, and community. If this story kept you up tonight, good. That means it did its job. African folklore is not primitive. It is ancient wisdom dressed in shadow. Every monster has a meaning. Every curse has a cause. Every haunting is a lesson waiting to be heard. If you want more stories from the continent that first told stories, subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment telling me which part gave you chills. Until next time, don't take what isn't yours. And whatever you hear whispering between the trees at night, don't answer.